Alright, so starting a photography business is pretty exciting. I remember when I first started my photography business, going full-time nearly 3 years ago now, it was probably the most exciting and scary times of my life. And with all that excitement, I missed, until I noticed recently, quite a few client red flags. So in today's video, we're going to be going through 5 client red flags that you should keep an eye on if you're just starting out in photography and videography. Let's get into it. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name's Connor Wells. I am a freelance photographer, videographer and podcast producer, and I make videos about all those things every single week. So if that's something you're into, consider subscribing. So let's get into some client red flags. Number 1, I'm going to start with possibly my least favorite. I think time is a valuable thing, and that is lack of respect for your time. It's a bugbear for me when clients turn up late to shoot or don't respect your time, whether it be your work hours or your private time. The amount of times where I've scheduled a Zoom meeting or a conference call or an in-person meeting and a client doesn't show up, they're half an hour late, or they say they got the time wrong. I've got a pretty simple booking system and it clearly shows the times and dates. It just shows absolute rudeness and lack of care for the project that you're about to undertake. If clients turn up late to shoots or turn up late to meetings and briefings and pitches, then it just shows a real disregard and is a huge red flag, and you should keep an eye on that, particularly if you are going to go ahead with the project. Now, I mentioned earlier about clients not respecting and appreciating your time outside of work. If a client is messaging you past your work hours, now for myself, everybody's different, but for myself, I only really reply to client messages from around 9 AM to 5:30 PM. Anything before or after that, it waits till the morning, unless it is an absolute emergency. But I've never really found a client to have an absolute emergency where I think, oh, actually, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. Let's make a change. Let's make an edit, or let's sort something out. It can wait till the next day, or if it's a Friday, it can wait till Monday. So if a client is turning up late to meetings or regular shoots, it's probably a good idea to have a little think and see if you want to actually proceed with working with them. Client red flag number 2 is unrealistic budget expectations. Now, talking money, talking figures is always an awkward conversation to have. I don't find it as awkward anymore. Since being full-time for 3 years, I think it's good to get straight to the point and talking about money, talking about their budget expectations, and really sort of getting everybody on the same playing field, particularly with budget expectations. If a client has got a budget of, let's say, $500 and they send you a video reference that they'd love to replicate, and it's a Netflix short film shot on an Arri Alexa with all of the cine lenses you can imagine, then there's definitely going to have to be a conversation about their expectations of what we're going to deliver to meet their budget. If a client comes to you with a very low budget but with high expectations, it can be a red flag, and it can be a sign that they don't value your work. For myself, I really go with my gut now. I used to just sort of take every job under the sun because I was starting out, but now I really trust my gut. And if I get a feeling that a client doesn't want to pay the fair market rate for the work, then I feel, do you know what, maybe I'm going to pass this job over to somebody else, and I'm going to stick to working with clients who do value my work, do value my time that it takes to create a video and plan a photo shoot, produce a podcast, all those sorts of things. Now, speaking of money, this is red flag number 3, insisting you work for exposure. Now, I briefly touched on a scenario a couple of weeks ago on my podcast called the Creative Caffeine Podcast. If you are a creative, a photographer, a videographer, or a content creator, then trust me, this podcast is for you. Every week we put out an episode, whether it's just me and my co-host Ben, talking about specific things like photography business, how to book more shoots, how to plan a wedding, or we actually get a guest in. Last week we had Kirsty Boubert. She is a fantastic wedding photographer. Honestly, she's booked out for the next 2 years. If you want a podcast where we're photographers and videographers that aren't doing these big, massive 50k budget shoots, and you know, we're relatable, then check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Anyway, I've sidetracked a bit there, but on a few episodes ago, I actually spoke about an experience that I had not long ago. It actually happened this year, where a influencer with around 3 million followers on Instagram, they messaged me asking if I could do a 2-day shoot, both photos and videos, and in compensation, I'd be paid with social exposure. Now, I don't think my landlord will be too pleased if I tell him that the rent's being paid in exposure this month, so I declined. Now, let me make it clear, it's not uncommon for new photographers and new videographers to work for exposure. I am not fully against it. Particularly if you're just starting out, you need to get your name out there, you need to build up your portfolio. It can actually benefit you, but when you've been full-time for 3 years and you've got an established client base, you've got a reputation to uphold, you can't really be doing these free jobs, you can't really be working for exposure or working for a tag on a post on Instagram or a mention in a story that, let's face it, only lasts for 24 hours, and let's be honest, who reads the captions on Instagram posts anymore? Being offered to be paid in exposure or a social shout out really is a lack of respect for your skills and experience in the job. So again, if you are just starting out, yeah, work for free, build up your exposure before you start making bread. But if you are an established photographer or videographer and you do get the offer to be paid in exposure, just really have a think about it and think how much value can it actually bring. Red flag number 4 is negative reputation. Now, if a potential client has a negative reputation or has left negative reviews with previous photographers or creatives that they've worked with, that can be a little bit of a red flag. It's definitely an early warning sign that there could be some difficult working conditions. Definitely be cautious when working or potentially working with a client who, does leave negative reviews or does have a reputation for not being the most easy to work with. My advice to navigate this is build up a core group of like-minded individuals in your area. For me, I've got a Facebook group called Create, Sleep, Repeat. It's a big Facebook group full of creatives here in the UK. It's built up by photographers, videographers and editors, and it's a big community where you can post your questions if you've got a concern, if you're looking for help, if you're looking for some constructive criticism, feel free to join that group and get involved in the community. But build up a group of photographers and videographers in your area that you can message. For me, I've got a group chat as well, and surprisingly, a lot of the time we actually do get the same messages from potential clients who just spam the Google search for local photographers and videographers and just copy and paste the same message. Or one of my other videographer friends may share their experience with a recent client that they've worked with and just be like, if they message you, just be a little bit wary. And number 5, this is something that to this day I still actually have to deal with, and that is frequent rescheduling. Now, let's be real, it is understandable that, unforeseen circumstances can arise, but if it happens on a regular basis, I'd start asking questions. Clients who frequently reschedule appointments or shoots at the very last minute, it can be a sign of their lack of interest and their disregard for your time. And also, they just come across really, really flaky. I used to have a client who would literally, like clockwork, cancel the evening before we were meant to have a shoot. It used to happen every time, saying, we're not prepared, can we reschedule for another week? So we'd push it back by a week, and then same again, I'd get an email or a text or an Instagram message saying, really sorry, but can we reschedule again? And it got to the point where I was no longer interested in the shoot because I was constantly worrying about, am I gonna have to keep a day free the next week or the week after, just in case this client reschedules? It stops you taking on new work. It stops you investing time and effort and learning new skills for your business. Constantly rescheduling is a sign for a lack of commitment. And if you're wanting to build a successful creative photography, videography business, well, I would watch the video up there that I made. Also, you want to build long-standing relationships, and constantly rescheduling, it just comes across as flaky, and it's definitely a red flag. So those are 5 client red flags that you should watch out for and how to navigate them. If you would like to see a part 2, trust me, there's enough for about 15 parts. Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.